when we account for the overlap among the three big Disney services, being Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, we think that the combined viewing on those services is probably bigger than Amazon.
Hey gang, it's Tuesday, September 7th. I hope everyone had exceptionally nice Labor Day weekends. Paul and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by our principal analyst covering everything TV and video. It's Paul Verna. Great to be here as always. Hey chap, so today's fact. Roughly 1/3 of languages spoken today are endangered. There are over 7,000 or around 7,000 languages spoken throughout the world today, depending on which source you ask. But because many of these are spoken by a small number of people, they are considered at risk of extinction. Between 1950 and 2010, so that's 60-year stretch, 230 languages went extinct. According to the UNESCO Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger, today, a staggering third of the world's languages have fewer than 1,000 speakers left, total. Each of those languages that are endangered, a third, have 1,000 speakers left and therefore face extinction. Every 2 weeks, a language dies with its last speaker. Paul, how many languages do you speak again?
3 if you count French, but I need at least 2 or 3 glasses of wine to launch into French.
Yes.
And then I have a pretty good working knowledge of the other Romance languages because, you know, knowing Spanish and French,
right,
they kind of fall into place. But I will say, in terms of languages and extinction, no one has done more damage to the English language than Americans. So apologies for that, Marcus. So I think the proper English language, it's not going to go extinct because you guys are still holding up the Union Jack out there, but we've done a lot of harm.
You guys aren't helping. However, if the English aren't helping either, we speak the least amount of languages of anyone else. So Paul is at least helping some languages' cause by keeping them in existence. I'm doing nothing. I'm keeping English going. That's the most I can help, okay? That's my limit. There are close to 900 languages spoken in Papua New Guinea alone. 900 in one country. Their population is only 9 million. Similar to New York. So New York City has a similar population size and number of languages spoken, about 900.
Wow. I wonder what road signs look like in Papua New Guinea. Do they have to translate them into 900 languages?
It'd be a disaster. Enough with this! Just have an arrow and a picture of what the place might look like. No, it's not what we've got time. That's what we've got time for the fact of the day.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Tricked ya! No real episode here today. We're actually talking about Disney Plus and where they go from here. Haha, pun intended. All right, folks. So as we explained in the HBO Max episode, Paul, Disney Plus was in third place on the most US streaming subscribers list, behind Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, at least according to figures collected by Adweek's Kelsey Sutton. She didn't include Amazon Prime Video, but we threw it in there because we felt like it needs to be represented on the list of platforms with the most video streaming subscribers. So if you throw that onto Kelsey Sutton's list, then you've got Netflix up front, then Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus would come in third place, and then it's HBO Max in fourth, Peacock in fifth. But let's dig into that Disney Plus in third place for a second. So at the end of Q2, Disney Plus had added 12 million new subscribers, bringing its total to 116 million. In the US and Canada, though, Disney Plus's total subscribers only ticked up by 1 million, from 37 to 38 million, notes the information. Paul, what jumps out to you here about Disney Plus's Q2 results on the subscriber side, and why?
Well, first of all, I think they're doing very well. They've outpaced expectations, which is always good. And I'm not just talking about the quarter where the expectation was for 112 to 115 million and they hit 116 million. I'm really just talking about overall. I mean, I think they basically reached their 5-year target in the first 9 months, which is pretty amazing.
Yep.
To your point about US and Canada, Disney is following in a similar trajectory as the market leader, Netflix, where more growth is coming from overseas. But again, that's where I think Disney has a real strength in that it has a big global business. I mean, if you look at Hulu before it was acquired by Disney, Hulu was very much a US or North America centered service. So I think when you have that global footprint and you have brands that carry across different territories and different languages, including all 900 of the ones in Papua New Guinea, then you have a real robust business that can grow even if your largest market is maybe not growing at the same rate.
Do you think it's concerning, though, that Disney Plus seems to be slowing down in their home market already? Because you're right, following the market trend, Netflix US and Canadian subscribers ticked down slightly in Q2, despite a pretty decent boost helped by the pandemic last year. But Netflix has nearly twice as many subscribers as Disney Plus does in the US and Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Disney is looking at that number and wondering, what can we do to grow our sort of flagship market? At the same time, I think we're still in a period with Disney Plus and really with all of the subscription services that launched in the past year or year and a half, where the jury is still out. There are so many bundles or promotional offers that give people access to these services that it's really hard to gauge what's going to happen in the long run. I mean, you could actually even make that point as an argument for Disney being even more concerned, because I think a lot of their usage now, a lot of their subscriptions are coming from these offers. So what happens when they expire?
Right.
But at the same time, I see Disney as a company that has so many benefits or advantages and so many touch points. I mean, they have their theatrical business, they have the TV network, they have original content that they're creating for Disney Plus, they have ESPN, and they have this legacy of very, very popular film franchises that they can leverage and have leveraged into new hit shows. So there's just so much in the Disney portfolio to propel them along that I think the streaming service will do well, in the long run. And even if it doesn't, I don't think Disney is relying on it to be a standalone profit center. I mean, they obviously don't want it to lose money, but they also can use it to promote some of those other connected brands.
Thinking about the kind of overlap of users, either between the market leader Netflix and Disney Plus, or some of these other properties as well, Amazon Prime Video, HBO Max. We think about Disney Plus and what they have to offer. So they've got Pixar, they've got Marvel, they've got the Star Wars series, they've got National Geographic, they've got the Disney Vault. Do you see Disney Plus pivoting into other types of content, other flavors of content? And do you think that that's part of the reason for their ceiling, is that it is very much a family brand, a millennial brand, a parents of millennials brand, where they can tap into that content that hits home from a nostalgia perspective, and also for the kids' content if you've got a family, but they're somewhat capped, whereas Netflix, they do have a plethora of things, and that's why they're able to secure, at least in the US and Canada, more subscribers than Disney Plus?
Yeah, I mean, I think Disney has always geared itself toward family entertainment, and that cuts across most of its offerings. I mean, with the exception maybe of some theatrical titles that are not necessarily, family oriented. But whereas, Netflix, I think, has tried to be all things to all people and has done a very good job of that. But even within the range of brands that you mentioned in the Disney portfolio, there's quite a bit of diversity, probably a significant amount of overlap despite the diversity, but there is a lot there, and it wouldn't be too far-fetched for Disney to create another brand or acquire a brand that is not necessarily associated with kid-friendly content and is more sort of like, hard-hitting dramas or reality shows or anything along those lines. So, if they feel that they need to do that in order to chip away at Netflix, they have the capability to do that. A lot has been made of the fact that if you look at Disney Plus and Netflix, of course, there's overlap, but there's also enough differentiation that there's room for both in the market.
Right. If you look at viewers, which is what we count, not subscribers, but viewers, US subscription OTT video viewers, so by platform, there is room to grow still. So in the US, as I mentioned, Netflix today has 175 million viewers. In second place is Amazon with the Prime Video, 147, so about 30 million back. About 40 million back from them is Hulu. And then 10 million back from them is Disney Plus with just over 100 million viewers this year. HBO Max is half what Disney Plus is, so they're behind it at 54 million. But if you project out into the future, 2023, you're going to see Netflix still up front. Then you're going to see Amazon in second still. But you're going to see Disney Plus overtake Hulu to take third place there, and then you're going to see Hulu just behind in fourth, and then HBO Max still a ways behind in fifth place. And actually, by 2024, you're going to see Disney Plus start to threaten Amazon in second place. So in terms of viewers, you can be a subscriber but have multiple viewers in the house. They do still have some runway.
Yeah, and also to the point about Disney's portfolio, you just cited figures that treat Disney Plus and Hulu as separate entities, but let's remember that they're under the same corporate umbrella. And actually, when we account for the overlap among the three big Disney services, being Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, we think that the combined viewing on those services is probably bigger than Amazon. So you could even say that corporate Disney is the number 2 streaming service if you take all of those together, even when you factor out the overlap. One other quick note I'll mention, I know we talked about Warner and HBO Max in a previous podcast, but we are seeing significant growth, and we're going to be presenting an updated forecast pretty soon that will show that. So just a little teaser that, HBO Max is definitely on the upswing. I think their growth is definitely higher than expected, which, could kind of, I don't think it's going to change who's in which place in terms of those rankings, but it will definitely color the figures that we see in the marketplace going forward.
That's an important point. Yeah, because these figures are from earlier on in the year. I think they published February 2021. So as Paul mentioned, those new figures will reflect some of the things that have been going on in the first half of this year, taking into account those Q1 and Q2 results. Paul, we mentioned Hulu, which is owned by Disney, and ESPN Plus, owned by Disney. Both of those, ESPN Plus, Hulu, can also be wrapped up with Disney Plus in that bundle. Disney said Hulu had about 43 million subscribers. That was up 20% year on year. And about 15 million people now have ESPN Plus, up 75% year on year. So Hulu, 43 million. ESPN Plus, 15 million. If you had to pick, which service are you more impressed with at this point?
Out of Hulu and ESPN Plus, I would probably say that Hulu, only because of the size of their subscriber base, being quite a bit bigger than ESPN Plus. But, I will give a nod to ESPN Plus as the leading standalone sports service, or not standalone in the sense, they're obviously part of Disney, but they specialize in sports. And unlike some of the other streaming services that have a big sports representation like Peacock or Warner Media, ESPN is obviously all about sports. So again, I think it comes down to how Disney has very smartly branded all of its services, where it's very clear what you get with each of them. So it's hard for me to single one out and say, oh, this one's doing a lot better than the other one. But I think the numbers that Hulu is putting up are very strong.
Yeah. I'm just looking at what kind of upside they have. So ESPN Plus viewers, we think 25 million today, and the Hulu viewers, 110. So ESPN Plus, less than a quarter the size of Hulu today. But if you fast forward into the future, it's going to be over a third of the number of Hulu viewers by 2025 in terms of ESPN Plus, 46 million by 2025. Yeah, we estimate a few more numbers on Hulu. We estimate Hulu's ad revenues, which are US only, will increase by 33% this year to 3.4 billion. Hulu viewers, we expect will be up 8% to 110 million, as I mentioned, this year, after growing 34% in 2020. And in terms of Hulu Plus live TV, those folks, we think that they will reach 12 million this year, accounting for 11% of Hulu's total viewer base. Paul, I want to pivot really quickly to the international picture for a few seconds when it comes to Disney Plus. Worldwide, Disney Plus is doing well. Netflix added less than 2 million subscribers worldwide Q1 to Q2. Disney Plus added 6 times that. In addition to that, Disney Plus has delayed their Eastern European expansion from late 2021 until September of next year. So that could be a big boost for subscribers, especially considering Eastern Europe's population is the same size as America's population, and international mattering more and more. In Q1, nearly a third of total subscribers came from India alone. So tremendous upside for Disney Plus internationally.
Yeah, and again, a big parallel to Netflix. We're used to now seeing that Netflix from quarter to quarter, their growth is much higher outside the U.S. than in the U.S. And also, at a certain point, a couple of years ago, international subscribers crossed over and, were higher than U.S. subscribers, and that has remained the case. I think we're going to see a similar kind of trajectory with Disney Plus, where the growth, even if it can shore up things in the U.S., as we discussed earlier, there's always going to be more growth in all of these markets where, they're just now getting started.
Money-wise, final thing for you, $3 billion in Disney Plus subscription revenues this year, well above $4 billion next year. There are numbers. Disney as a whole logged $4.3 billion in total streaming revenue, up nearly 60% year on year, and traditional TV remains a huge business for Disney, generating nearly $7 billion in revenue in Q2, up 16%. That's all we've got time for the first half. Time now for, of course, the halftime report, where we summarize key takeaways in a matter of seconds. Paul, what are your key takeaways from the first half?
I think the key takeaway with Disney Plus is that it is the real deal. It's here to stay. When it launched, there were questions, as to how it would perform in the marketplace. But I think really what we're seeing is a situation where it and Netflix and Amazon are overlapping quite a bit, but also addressing the market in different enough ways that there really seems to be room for all of them.
All right, time now for In Other News, but first a quick word from our sponsor, VTEX. Everyone is talking about digital transformation, but what does it mean in real life? Digital Insider is a new podcast series about the digitization of retail, where business leaders, academics, and thinkers discuss how businesses are transforming and give their perspectives, practical advice, thought process, and lessons learned. Go to digitalinsider.com to learn more, or listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, folks, we are back today in other news. Nielsen will no longer be third-party accredited by the MRC. Are national TV advertiser minutes per hour up or down? And how is Apple TV Plus getting on? Story 1. As Kelsey Sutton of Adweek writes, it's finally official. Nielsen's national TV service, which has long served as a crucial measurement backbone for the TV media industry, will no longer be third-party accredited by the Independent Media Rating Council, effective later this month, she writes. Insider Intelligence analyst Daniel Konstantinovich explains that this comes after Nielsen was being accused of undercounting viewership in the all-important 18 to 49 demographic since at least May of this year. Paul, what does this all mean?
Well, this was not unexpected, because the push to have this accreditation reviewed started some months ago, and we've been talking about it and documenting it in various ways. So it definitely didn't surprise me and probably anyone that the decision was actually made to suspend accreditation. And in recent days, Nielsen had asked for this process to be put on hold, and that didn't happen. So it's really not a surprise, but it is a big deal, because not only does it remove this third-party sort of approval that Nielsen has had, around its service, but I think more importantly, it's just an escalation in the very fraught relationship between Nielsen and its core customer base, who are the TV networks. There have been some shots across the bow over the past several months and really years. But lately, I think things have been ratcheted up, and this is just a culmination of that.
Yeah, talking about that relationship, Daniel also noting last week that NBC Universal said it was partnering with, quote-unquote, a broad network of trusted partners to create, quote-unquote, a full suite of interoperable measurement solutions. because legacy measurement companies weren't able to measure changing viewing habits. Our Daniel Konstantinovich also noting that despite TV being a declining medium, it accounting for 23% of ad spending today, but ticking down to 17% in 4 years. He says, quote, a new metric for TV engagement also has the potential to change the course of TV's perceived downward trend and bring back lost advertisers, close quote. Story 2. National TV advertising minutes per hour grew sharply by 6% year on year in Q2. You may be wondering why I said sharply and it's only 6%. This is because it's the sharpest quarterly spike in years, writes West Coast editor of Media Post Wayne Friedman. An analysis from Moffett-Nathanson surveyed 8 major TV network groups and independents. It found TV commercials minutes per hour across total day viewing was at 13.3 minutes per hour versus 12.6 minutes per hour last Q2. So from 12.6 to 13.3. Paul, is this a big, medium, or little deal?
I think it's par for the course. You cited earlier some of the stats on TV advertising, TV viewership. They're obviously both down or TV advertising has flatlined. And basically what's going on is the networks feel like the only way to make up for this loss is to, as our one-time colleague and renowned TV industry consultant Gerard Broussard says, stuff the bird. So I think that's a appropriate analogy to what's going on. They're really just trying to cram more ad minutes into each hour. There's obviously a ceiling to how much people will tolerate, but I think in the absence of another, of any viable alternative, this is what the TV networks, or at least some of them, feel like they have to do.
Yeah, Discovery showed the biggest growth, up 16% year on year to an average of 13.7 minutes. The 2 TV networks with the most average commercial minutes were A&E Networks, 14.7, and Viacom CBS, 14.3 minutes. And Walt Disney Networks had the lowest commercial minutes per hour at 11.7, up just 3% year on year. Story 3. How is Apple TV getting on? Well, number 1, T-Mobile is giving customers a free year of Apple TV Plus, notes Chaim Gartenberg of The Verge. Both new and existing subscribers to its Magenta and Magenta Max plans get a year of Apple's newish streaming service. If you buy an Apple device, you also get the additional 3 months that comes with that, so 15 months in total. Number 2, 20-time Emmy-nominated TV show Ted Lasso for potentially Best Comedy and Best Actor for Mr. Lasso, played by Jason Sudeikis, has become a hit for Apple. 20 nominations is a record for the most Emmy nominations for a freshman comedy, and the second season premiere was the most streamed show on Apple TV+. But Paul, is this enough to help Apple TV Plus actually get itself into the streaming wars conversation?
Well, just to start with the T-Mobile offering, this is what we were talking about earlier in relation to mostly to Disney, but also in general to bundle deals. And when you have something like this, it definitely boosts viewership and subscriber numbers, but it could be sort of a false front, and you just have to wait till those things play out to see what happens. I think to the larger point of the content on Apple TV Plus, I think we can all agree, even without the kinds of metrics that we would like to see and the kind that in a previous lifetime Nielsen would provide, we don't really have hard numbers as to exactly what is meant by a hit. But Ted Lasso, I think by any stretch, is a hit. It's really kind of hit the zeitgeist. And as you mentioned, those 20 Emmy nominations, that's a staggering number. And I think it's just part of so many conversations and has really, really struck a chord and come out of nowhere to do it. Because when it launched last year, it wasn't really on a lot of people's radars. And then it just kind of like worked its way into public consciousness. So the key here is, can Apple do this again and again and again? I've said before that with tech companies like Netflix and Amazon getting into entertainment, they basically go from being Silicon Valley companies to being Hollywood studios, and that means they're relying on hits. And hits are very mercurial. You can definitely use your data to try to target and, do some content planning, but at the end of the day, nobody ever knows what's going to resonate and what's not. So if Apple can make lightning strike, 2, 3, 4 times, then yes, I think it will be a big part of the conversation. If it can't, then, it may have more of a niche in the market.
lightning striking 2, 3, 4 times, I think is, for me, the hitting the nail on the head there, because I think, if you've got one hit show, you get people interested. If you have 2, 3, or 4 decent shows, then you can get someone to subscribe because there's more there other than just that one hit show. And if you can produce 5 to 10, maybe 15 other pieces of interesting content, you can keep people around. But we'll see.
And just a little coda there. When you have, or if you have a whole sort of suite of hit shows, then you can also stagger them in the calendar so that you reduce churn. And that's what Netflix has gotten very good at doing. So that's another benefit, of course, of having more than one hit.
Yep, absolutely. That's all we've got time for today's episode. Thank you so much to Paul.
Great to be here as always. Thank you.
Of course, thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening. See you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by VTEX.